Hello and welcome to Sports Talk. It is Saturday, October 29, 2022. I'm Daniel Blake. Thank you so much for joining me. Cricket is the main focus today because the T20 World Cup is going on, but the West Indies not a part of it, crashing out in the group stage to the likes of Ireland and Scotland. It truly doesn't get any worse for our cricket. Phil Simmons has resigned as the head coach. Cricket West Indies president Ricky Skerritt, who criticized the batsmen shortly after we crashed out, saying there's going to be a post-mortem, so expect more changes in the coming weeks. To talk about all of that, I spoke with internationally renowned cricket commentator Fazir Mohammed, who we will hear from in just a few minutes. We'll also hear from two players who have been there and done that. Kieron Pollard, the most recent T20 captain. He spoke with Andre Baptiste, Trinidadian sports journalist, recently. Also Dwayne Bravo, who won World Cup titles with the West Indies. So we're going to hear from both of them as they react to everything regarding the team's position right now. We'll also talk a little netball because the Sunshine Girls will be in action next week as they participate in the Fast Five World Series in New Zealand. Annette Daly will coach the team, and I spoke with her about their preparations and objectives heading into the tournament. So stay tuned for that as well. Usually I would do my sports bits and my monologue, but because we have so much to get to, we're just going to get right into it. So, internationally renowned cricket commentator Fazir Mohammed joined me on Friday to discuss the fallout from the West Indies crashing out of the T20 World Cup. Would you say that this is probably the most embarrassing period, knowing that we are supposed to be T20 specialists, being two-time champions? Is this the most embarrassing time as a West Indian fan, pundit, former player, everything?
Well, I suppose the fact that I'm getting grave very, very quickly answers the question. But yes, you can look across many things over the last almost 27 years since the West Indies surrendered that long unbeaten run in Test cricket. Huge embarrassments in Test match cricket, even in one-day cricket, having to go through the qualifiers for the 2019 World Cup. But you put it perfectly in context. You're talking about a team, a region that would have been champions as recently as 13 months ago, defending champions going into the UAE last year, only to finish second from bottom in the group. And even then, that one victory was by 3 runs over Bangladesh. And then to make wholesale changes and now come into a situation where you've got to go through a qualifying phase. And I know some people say, well, don't worry, don't make it so bad because the qualifying phase is still part of the World Cup and so on. But let's be real. We're talking about two-time champions here who lost to Scotland convincingly, lost to Ireland even more convincingly, to not even make the Super 12. So yes, with all of that put together, this certainly would rank among the most embarrassing experiences in the senior men's West Indies cricket team.
Phil Simmons, instead of, I guess, waiting for that call, decided to step away himself. Are you surprised that he has gone completely? Because we have seen some progress in the Test team, but is it somewhat of a surprise that he decided to walk away from the entire men's setup?
Not really, for a number of reasons. One, we have an expression in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know what the Jamaican equivalent is, but it's called taking in front before in front takes you. And we talk about a good record so far in Test cricket, that victory over England in Grenada, followed by back-to-back wins over Bangladesh. But the West Indies' next 2 Test matches are against Australia in Australia. One in Perth, one a day-night match in Adelaide. And I think everyone, even the most ardent optimist, is fearing the worst. And I suspect, in fact, it's a legitimate question to be asked. Why hang on for what could be an even more chastening experience in Perth and Adelaide than what has already happened in Australia? But I give him credit for the fact that he's decided to go rather than wait to be sacked or face some other sort of embarrassment. But I just question what benefit can be gained, because if he manages to pull it off, I'll tell you, if the West Indies don't lose test matches in Perth and Adelaide without significant intervention by the rain, it will be a tremendous achievement. And if he could pull that off, well, then he'll be going out on a high, notwithstanding this embarrassment. But I fear that his final sojourn with the West Indies as senior men's head coach will be in the face of embarrassing defeats in Perth and Adelaide. But as I said, I give him credit for bowing out with some measure of dignity without having to be pushed, knowing him to be such a passionate individual, someone who I recall even in the days of Trinidad and Tobago youth cricket, was someone who dreamt of playing for the West Indies. And now in his role as coach, he was obviously very, very intense, very, very keen to try in some way to revive West Indies cricket. But I think this was just the straw that broke the camel's back, basically.
Yeah, you mentioned that his first stint was highlighted by that 2016 World Cup win, was removed by then Cricket West Indies president Dave Cameron, returned in 2019, but oversaw some unsuccessful World Cup campaigns, a 50 over and T20 World Cup. How would you regard his second stint, not just in white ball cricket, but in red ball cricket? Do you think that he made a huge difference, like he said he would have made in 2019, or do you think we're in the same place like when he just arrived?
I think we're back in the same place, and it's not necessarily his fault. In fact, just pondering over the situation, West Indies over the years, since we appointed our first senior men's head coach in Rohan Kanhai in 1992, it's been a succession of individuals, a few foreign-based, but the majority have been West Indians, and the majority have been some of our greatest names. Our first coach was Rohan Kanhai. Then we had the likes of Sir Andy Roberts, Malcolm Marshall, Sir Clive Lloyd, Sir Vivian Richards, and you could just go down the list. And now you have a situation where Phil Simmons was given the job for a second time, as you said quite correctly. I don't think there's been any significant progress. If you look at the numbers in T20 cricket, in one-day cricket, they are very poor returns over the last 3 years. In Test cricket, yes, you can talk about the win in Bangladesh, 2-0 in Bangladesh, but then coming back to the Caribbean, being badly beaten by South Africa in St. Lucia. So again, when you put it in its entirety, the overall impression is still not a good one, although in Test match cricket, you could actually see in 2022 a bit of progress. But once more, I add the significant caveat that everything will put in proper relief with those 2 test matches against Australia. So like almost every other West Indies coach, he's struggled, not just with the situation as far as the quality of players available to him, but his relationship with Cricket West Indies, because as you mentioned, he was suspended within weeks of that success in the World T20 in 2016, simply because he spoke out against what he saw as interference in the selection process.
So CEO of Cricket West Indies, Johnny Graves, said they might go for different coaches for the red ball and the white ball teams. I know it's a common practice now happening all around the world, but with our dynamic due to our lack of resources and our fairly, I would say, small talent pool, do you think that structure would help us or be less beneficial?
You know, I don't think any option would actually make a difference, whether you go with two white ball coaches, T20 and 1 and 50 over, and another coach for the red ball, 3 coaches or 2 or 1 or some other hybrid. It won't make a difference unless we address the fundamental issues in West Indies cricket, which talk about the structure of our game, the quality of players coming through our ranks, because it's not about a lack of talent. And again, when you draw references, for example, who's to say that with the current, with a proper structure, proper environment, a proper nurturing, proper mentoring, an environment that insists upon discipline and excellence at all levels, administration and players. Someone like a Nicholas Puran, for example, couldn't he have been a latter-day Alvin Kalicharan with his left-handed style? But again, he's brought up in an environment of T20 cricket. And again, because it's a very lucrative environment, no problems with that whatsoever, he has limited his own growth as a batsman. Shimron Hetmaya, who should have been with the West Indies in Australia, whatever the issues, again, it speaks to a continuous problem as far as player relationships with the administrators. We could argue that the players are getting too big for their britches, that they have too much money, and they feel that they are low unto themselves. Or you could argue that the administrators have operated as administrators invariably do in the Caribbean, like if they're lords of the manor, lords of the estate, feeling that they could dictate to everybody. I suspect it's somewhere in the middle. And we've yet to find a way to have that proper conversation, to have that proper healthy environment where people could agree to disagree. We don't always have to agree with everything, but people could agree to disagree and still sit around the table to work in the best interest of West Indies cricket. So having taken so long to answer your question, it is to sum it up basically, I'll say that it really doesn't matter who you put, local, foreign, regional, international, superstar, unknown, one coach, two coach, three coaches. It doesn't matter unless we fix these fundamental problems in our structure.
You speak about those fundamental problems. President of Cricket West Indies, Ricky Skerritt, in a statement shortly after we crashed out, blamed the batsmen for not being able to maneuver slow bowling, poor shot selection, which we have been speaking about for over a decade now. What radical change does he and the board have to make to ensure that we don't continuously have these conversations every time after, whether it's a test series, a ODI series, a World Cup, whether 50 over a T20? What needs to be that radical change for this to, stop happening?
Well, it's not really radical. It's simple, but in the context of West Indies cricket, it's difficult. But in that first point you made about the comment from the Cricket West Indies president about failure to maneuver the ball around and all that sort of thing, I made a comment in a separate interview. Is he now a cricket analyst? And it's not to say that he doesn't have a right to analyze critically. Of course he does, like anyone else. But the fact is, he has been silent previously. With the different embarrassments that we would have faced in different formats of the game, he would have been silent. There was no indication of a thorough post-mortem when you finished second from bottom as defending champions last year. There was no analysis from the Cricket West Indies president then. So why now? It just seems very convenient. That's one point. The other point is that you say radical, and for us, maybe doing the right thing seems radical, because it is basically what we are required to do now is put the best people in the right positions. And it's not just at West Indies level, but at Jamaica level, Trinidad and Tobago level, Guyana level. Guyana Cricket Board have been having this issue with their legal status with the authorities in Guyana and the constant toing and froing for more than a decade. Various territorial boards have all sorts of issues that have more to do with politics than cricket. So if we could actually come up with the will and the way to appoint the best people, coaches, selectors, administrators, individuals who see not just territorial cricket first, but West Indies cricket first, then we will be on the right track. It won't be a quick fix. We've been trying for quick fixes for 27 years, and occasionally we enjoy some glory. 2016 famously with those 3 titles, the men, the women, and before that the under-19s. But look what happened subsequently. And Again, it speaks to the fact that we do have the talent. And when it comes together, when it coalesces, it's fantastic. But more often than not, because we've lacked the discipline throughout our structure that pushes players to be consistently excellent, to be consistently at a high level of performance, to be sufficiently motivated to want to play for the West Indies, even when you're making millions and tens of millions of US dollars, that you understand what it means to play for the West Indies beyond the money itself. That's where we've lost a lot of ground. And I think more than anything else, we need to get back to that fundamental of a proper structure that brings out the best, and the best are selected not because they're a favorite of an administrator or whoever else. And as I said, it's not radical, it's fairly simple, but it's not easy to implement in an environment like ours.
You mentioned Skerritt and his previous silence. One of the major things he said when he was just elected president was that he was going to give the region first preference in terms of positions at coaching level, administrative level. So far, we haven't seen the success in it. I know earlier you said it really doesn't matter where they come from, but in our state where we see countries really advancing, and we've seen even the likes of Ireland, as you mentioned, Afghanistan, and a lot of these countries who at one point were not, not to be disrespectful, but were not relevant in cricket for a very long time. Do you think that maybe he and the board should probably start to think, okay, maybe we should find a greater balance, because what's happening internationally, everyone seems to be far ahead of us here in the region.
It's interesting that you reference Ireland and Afghanistan, because Phil Simmons coached both those teams. Of course, he was the coach of Afghanistan at the 2019 Cricket World Cup, where Afghanistan finished bottom and West Indies finished second from bottom. And of course, he coached Ireland for 9 years to help in their growth. But again, the issue is, I take your point, and I see it as a valid observation. But again, just look at the tenure of our coaches over these many years. I'm sure if you had the time and you were to ask a question of any one of those great names who are West Indies coach at any one time, sadly Malcolm Marshall has passed away, but Sir Andy Roberts, Sir Clive Lloyd, Sir Vivian Richards, they'll probably say, look, don't ask me anything. I don't want to have anything to say about that, because it was not a good experience. Not so much because of the issue of performances on the field, which weren't always great, but because of what they felt was a lack of support from the administrators, and the feeling that they really didn't have the authority to do what they needed to do to get the job done. And even as you talk about foreign coaches, we've had some decent foreign coaches. Bennett King, John Dyson, the former Australian opening batsman, was a coach at one time. But even he had to step aside out of frustration, because the feeling always was that there was too much interference, that there's too much political style interference when you are hired to do a particular job. And you can just put yourself in those shoes. And it's not about making excuses for Simmons or making excuses for anyone else before him or anything like that. But if you are given a job to do, to a team to perform, you are one part of the selection panel. But as Simmons said openly, that there's interference, that people want players in who should not be in, want players out who should be in. And they are allowed to have their way because of their status at Cricket West Indies level. Then what's the point? What's the point of being a coach if you can't be given the authority to do what is required to be done in the best interest of the team?
Yeah. Skerritt has been heading the board for quite a while and has overseen all these things. And when he came in, he was very critical of what the previous administration under Dave Cameron did. Now that we have had almost 4 years of his reign, and we've seen all these issues, and as you mentioned, things don't seem to be getting any better. In this post-mortem that he says that he will carry out, should he be one of the names to say, okay, maybe I'm not the one to lead this transformation, or does he need, the proverbial more time, like a lot of people say?
Daniel, I would be very surprised if whether it's Ricky Skerritt or any administrator steps up and says, look, I take responsibility for this. I think as someone at a senior administrative level, I take responsibility and I am tendering my resignation because I don't feel I have delivered as would have been required by my mandate. But we don't have that culture. We don't have that culture in our part of the world where people resign on principle because they always feel that people are out to get them and all that. We have a very thin-skinned, narrow-minded perspective in our part of the world. But if you're really thinking about it in the context of really owning up, if you're talking about a post-mortem, that involves the administrators as well. It can't just be the players because again, it begs the question as to why we would have had over these many, and we know the Dave Cameron situation. He declared open war on the so-called big name franchise players because he felt it necessary to show who was boss. And we saw where that went after 2016. Now you have a situation where Ricky Skerritt has turned the needle in the opposite direction, where he's almost been kowtowing to everything that the players would want. And that doesn't serve West Indies cricket's purpose either. So at the end of the day, if we're really going to have a proper post-mortem, it means analyzing everything. Because again, not wanting to sound too graphic about it, if you're going to have a post-mortem, you look for the causes, whether it be in the brain, whether it be in the heart, whether it be somewhere else in the body, and therefore that involves administrators sitting down and honestly assessing their roles. Whether it's Jimmy Adams, the director of cricket, has he performed effectively in his role? Johnny Grave, the CEO, has he done effectively what would have been required? And of course, Ricky Skerritt at the very helm of the organization. At what point is there the dysfunction? At what point is there the failure to be able to bring forth all of that talent that we have in the region? Because again, as I re-emphasized, and I'm sure many people who know more about the game than me will know that we do have talent. You see it cropping up all over the place. But why do we continue to struggle to harness that talent and make that talent aware of the need to constantly to represent the West Indies because of what it means to play for the West Indies? So yes, to answer your specific question, it must include the role of the administrators and the failings of the administrators as to why we are where we are now when we talk about the T20 format.
In that post-mortem, I assume that Puran's captaincy will be under review, even under such a short time. Many of his decisions at the World Cup and in the series before questioned with, his bowling rotations, specific order of batsmen. Should the selectors stick with him, knowing that it's just a very short time that we have seen him, or do they go in a different direction like they've been doing over the last few years?
I think we've seen enough from Nicholas Puran to know that he needs to be replaced as captain because his tactical awareness just doesn't seem to be there. But when he speaks about the game, there are issues there which are very concerning, because after the New Zealand series, which the West Indies lost 2-1 and lost the one-day series subsequently, he was asked, persistent questions from the media, which have to be persistent whether people like it or not. He said, he's tired of being asked about strike rates and dot balls. But these are fundamentals. If you're talking about the T20 game, if you fail to recognize the importance of dot balls and strike rates in your failure to really put competitive totals on the board, then something has to be wrong. Maybe it is that he hasn't matured enough as an individual. It could be that he's been spending so much time, and again, no blame to him that he's so much in demand in the T20 format, franchise cricket all over the world, that he really hasn't allowed himself to fully appreciate all of the nuances of the game. And I can hear people who might be watching this interview say, well, how many matches you played for the West Indies? Who are you to comment on that? Well, the fact of the matter is you can only go by what you see in the context of previous iterations of West Indies captaincy. And therefore, Puran is found wanting technically, tactically, and his form has suffered seriously as a result of that. And therefore, I think the best thing for him and for West Indies cricket is for him to be a polite conversation and say, look, in your own interest, just step aside as West Indies captain. Let's see if we could get someone else, and then you could come back and be captain again, depending on your own growth and development. But based on what we've seen over the last year, and not just this World T20 experience, he needs to step aside and rethink his role in the West Indies team.
I would ask who you would think could be a possible replacement, but it seems like our team right now just filled with a lot of inexperience, because Rovman Powell, who 2 years ago couldn't make the team, is now vice captain of the T20 team. Jason Holder, who once was all format captain at one point, was removed, and then his T20 form skyrocketed. Now he is a must pick. What does it say about our leadership structure in terms of the players that we will essentially have to rely on the inexperienced players to carry this team forward?
Well, first and foremost, I would try to persuade Jason Holder to take the job again. As much as he may not want to, because I think he made quite clear last year he didn't appreciate the way he was replaced as Test captain, given the fact that he opted out of the Bangladesh series with the COVID-19 around, and West Indies was successful with Craig Brathwaite as captain and so on. He wasn't pleased. But having said all of that, I would want to have a serious conversation with him and say, look, this is where we are at. We need that level of experience. We need someone for whom there are no questions about his place in the team. I might have thought of Kyle Mayers as an option, but again, he's been struggling because it places an additional burden on players who really find themselves almost as if they're treading water, trying to hold on to their spots in the team. So my first option would be, if I was Desmond Haynes and still chairman of selectors, and they're both from Barbados, I would make the call and say, Jason, could we have a chat? Could we have a conversation? And if Jason says, well, Mr. Desmond Haynes, no, I'm not interested. Well, okay, that's the end of that, and I might have to look elsewhere. But seriously, I would have that discussion with Jason Holder to say, look, we need that level of experience, that level of level-headedness. It probably won't make a huge difference at the moment because, again, we find ourselves almost having to start from scratch. But I would look in the direction, first and foremost, to Jason Holder.
So finally, the Super 50 starts this weekend, even though it isn't the T20 format, it is white ball. Do you think that not just the players who will, fall back into their various countries, but do you think that players across all teams will be under more pressure and scrutiny because of all the the embarrassment of the T20 World Cup, the previous series where we weren't competitive? Do you think that they are now under more pressure than ever before to perform, not just for themselves, but for the selectors?
We may see it as pressure, Daniel, but I would rather look at it as motivation. Motivation for those players who are coming back from Australia to say, look, I'm going to show you that I am international caliber. Yes, it was poor in Australia, and I'll take the licks for it or whatever. I come from an era where you didn't even have to ask a name. You could tell who were the international players by the way they performed on the field. And it was something we grew up with, that you went to see what was known then as Shell Shield and then Red Stripe Cup and so on, because you knew you were going to get a test caliber performance from your test players. They may not have delivered all the time, but they stood out as individuals. And I think we need to get back to that. Whether it's T20, whether it's one day, whether it's the 4-day variety, we need to see our international cricketers as a class apart, who score hundreds as a matter of course, who take wickets as a matter of course. And also, for those emerging talents to say, well, okay, I'm going to show up these international players in the Super 50 competition that's coming up, because I think it's open season now. Because after that poor performance, surely there are spots open. So I am motivated to want to perform, to get into the one-day squad. And yes, more than likely the West Indies might have to go through qualifying for the next World Cup in India. But I want to put my name up in lights. I want to perform so that when people are reading the sportscast or at night, they mention my name very often, so that I'm offering myself to the selectors. So therefore, I understand your point about it possibly being seen as a pressure situation. But if you turn it around and say, this is a motivator for me to, one, show that notwithstanding the bad performance, I am a class international player, and two, for the emerging talents to show themselves on the regional stage to get that opportunity. I think it's a fantastic opportunity if the weather is good enough.
Fazir Mohammed, internationally renowned cricket commentator, joining me to talk about the West Indies and the fallout from their embarrassing run at the T20 World Cup. We go into a break, and when we come back, we'll hear from two players who have been there and done that, Kieron Pollard and Dwayne Bravo. And we'll also hear from Sunshine Girls Fast 5 head coach, Annette Daly. So stay with us.
How to prevent breast cancer? We're not really sure. So early detection is your best protection, and self-examination could be your salvation. So look good upon them appearance and investigate them texture, and use your hand to get acquainted with your breast tissue architecture. So the minute there's a change and you notice something strange, you can pay a doctor a visit so them can find out what is in it. And because some lumps are small that you can't feel them with your hand, if you're high risk or turn 40, you have to start the mammogram. And if cancer is the diagnosis, you could have a good prognosis, especially if it not start to spread. So between hand and mammogram, make we fight this thing as hard as we can.
International gospel music ministers Chandler Moore and Naomi Rain from Maverick City take the stage live at the National Stadium alongside Kevin Downswell, Arlene Davis, Rhoda Isabella, and Rondell Positive as Kingdom Culture presents the Well Encounter, the ultimate worship experience. National Stadium, Saturday, December 10. Early bird tickets at spuropen.com/TWE22. Follow on Instagram, the Well Encounter Experience. Sponsored by Purity, Sadcore, Love 101 FM, Grace, Pepsi.
You know what I count, yeah. Hey, me count, you count. Census say all of we count. Hey, you count, me count. Census say all of we count. Hey, information needed to develop the community. Them scouts them out and I get the reports. So don't bother hide when you see them.
Census 2022.
The Jamaican census will be conducted between September and December 2022.
You go.
You know what, sweet? The new pack Sweet Living promotion. Win great prizes.
Bedroom set, living room set, kitchen appliance set, plus TVs and monthly cash prizes.
Send in 5 new pack labels. Labels must belong to at least the new pack corned beef, new pack Vienna sausages, and sauces categories.
Below the tagline, new pack, more than just value.
Place your entry in one of the drop boxes at participating outlets or enter by mail. Time to live sweet. Enter the new pack Sweet Living promotion. August 28th to November 19th. See the press for more details. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Embrace the Promise is coming to Jamaica with Ron Kinoli, Jonathan Nelson, Prodigal Son, Dr. KJ, Kerry Sales, Jermaine Edwards, Joan Flemings, and more. Gate prizes of up to $300,000 at each location. 876-784-2992. Manning's High School, Westmoreland, Saturday, October 29, 6 p.m. Randy Williams Entertainment Center, Sunday, October 30 at 5 p.m. Sponsored by Bugs Innovations, Love FM, and more. Embrace the Promise.
It is 26 minutes to 2 o'clock.
Back to Sports Talk here on Love 101. So we heard from Fazir Mohammed earlier. Now to hear from Kieron Pollard and Dwayne Bravo, former captains, World Cup winners with the West Indies team. They reacted to the team's performance at the T20 World Cup. So let's start with Pollard speaking with Trinidadian sports journalist Andre Baptiste recently on his surprise on the team's performance.
A bit surprised, to be honest, that we wasn't able to get over the line, against the other teams. But again, that speaks volumes of where our cricket is at the moment. And again, I feel it for the guys because they are the ones that are going to get the bashing. And it's not all their fault. You have a young captain, you have a young players, guys who would not have played or only have played a handful, of T20 cricket. And now they're in a World Cup. And when I look back at it, I sit back and I have a smile on my face because I remember some of the things that was said last year around this time when some individuals weren't selected. And I just had to remind persons that it was a World Cup we are going to and another bilateral series. And now some of the individuals get opportunity to play in the World Cup. And again, look what has happened. And there's no fault of theirs, as I said. But when we try to sort of protect them and let persons understand they are not ready, for that, we were lambasted with a lot of things that were said that, was very derogatory at times. But again, I said it's a disappointment. And it's a sad day for West Indies cricket and all of us. And it's disappointing for me personally.
When you look at this West Indies team that was there, all the other teams have their best T20 players or the better players. We have, and I'm not putting it in this, but we only have Jason Holder with experience we do have Johnson Charles, with experience from a previous World Cups. I mean, how important would that have been?
Again, experience means a lot, and we take that for granted in the Caribbean. There's been a notion over the years, as soon as you reach a certain age, you should be done away with. And when you have guys in the team, they want you to get you out of the team. And when the guys are not there, they understand the importance of the guys. And this is another situation of not having a couple experienced guys around to help the youngsters and help the youth. Different individuals have been out for different reasons. But I still believe that for things to go, we all need to be on the same page, and we all need to have a proper plan, how we're going to do it. And it's deeper than what we actually see.
Any regrets that you're not there?
To be honest,
things have been different?
I can't tell. Yeah. I can't tell, but what I can tell you, I don't have regrets.
No. I put you under pressure here. Would you have gone with those players if you were the captain?
Might or might not. There might be a few different changes, but again, you have to pick what's there, and these are the guys that's there. We can sit and argue that we can get rid of X and Y, but we're gonna bring Q and S. And what experience do they have as well?
So that's what I want to ask you. When West Indians, and you were part of selection committees, when you're selecting a team, is form really the only guidance, or should you pick players based on class and experience, not only form? Because, we all know that people say form is temporary, but I'm just saying, should we pick players not just based on form?
Not just based on form, it's a holistic sort of approach on what you bring in all different facets and dimensions of the team. A guy might not be informed, but the experience and the knowledge that he can bring and share and help someone, could be valuable as well. But again, we, as a people, we go with what we see in front of us. So the last thing we would have seen maybe would have been CPL before the team was selected, and whoever did well in 2 games, they should be selected. And that's not how it goes. But again,
no, I'm reading all the team is missing Pollard, Russell, Bravo, and Narain. People are saying that now. Surprise?
Not surprise. As I said previously, and I'm gonna put it on record, and I keep saying, when you're there, they want you out. But when you're not there, your stocks rise. And I think that is wrong. I think we need to appreciate the guys when they're there. It's just like in life. You need to appreciate the person in flesh. Because when they're gone. And that's when we sit and regret.
Any chance for Karen Pollard to come back?
What is that?
Any chance for Karen Pollard to return to play for West Indies?
What are you saying?
I'm asking you, if today or tomorrow Ricky Skerritt go on the phone, or Desmond Hayes go on the phone, or somebody else go on the phone, Phil Simmons, and say, Karen Pollard, we need you.
I've said it, and I've said it in my retirement statement. I've had my time. I've thoroughly enjoyed each and every moment representing
the
West Indian team.
You didn't leave voluntarily. You would have been pushed out.
No one pushed me. And when they watch my size, it'll take a couple of people to push me well.
All right, so let me reframe that question. I don't feel you should have retired when you did, but circumstances made you do that. What I'm trying to say is you were not yet past your best when you left. Let me say that.
You just put it as, to me, I left at the right time. I have, no regrets of leaving. Obviously, I was trying to do, positive things. And I'm an individual, whereas I'm not just going to hang around for hanging around sake. When I think it's time, and we all as cricketers know, we get our feeling. And I had my moments, and I said, you know what, thank you very much. And I thank each and everybody, for the support, they have given me throughout, be it good, bad, or indifferent. And I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed, my time playing for West Indies. And again, this is my opportunity to give, to my family. At my young age, I said I have a young son who was enthusiastic, about
cricket. Again, off to easy, but I'll leave it there. Sunil Ryan, I mean, you're also close friends with him. Do you feel that he will be playing for the West Indies in the future?
It's a conversation to be had. I don't know. I'll have a conversation with him and see. I said everybody's situation.
Because you would have been the captain when he would have tried to get him on the team.
Yeah, of course, and he still didn't play, and we have a good relationship. So again, it's a conversation to be had. But it's very, very disappointing and sad, being a West Indian, being a West Indian cricketer, what has transpired, and I'm not honestly going to be one of the many who, as ex-cricketers or whatever, is going to sit and lambaste the players, because I of all persons know deep down this is just what the people are seeing. It's deeper than this.
I was on a program yesterday with BBC, a BBC Sports special program, and the question came up, and I referred to the fact that, which I just told you, that the West Indies is the only team that don't have their best players. I say I can name 6 or 7 players, best West Indian T20 players not here. And the obvious question that came from a guy, came from Big Marks. Anyway, one I want to make sure I get the names right, was why that is. Why is it that the West Indies always seem to have a history of their better players not staying on in the game? Is there some reason for that? You can even go back to Deadman Haynes, as the case may be. Is there a reason?
Again, there is a reason. And persons need to understand that people just don't get up one morning and say they don't want to represent the Caribbean, because this is what you dream about. What is the reason is the question. And how are we going to get the answers for the reason? How are we going to truthfully get the answers?
But the reason I'm saying that, Karen, is that if it's going on since Deadman Haynes' time and it's still going on.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a cultural thing. And it's something as a people we need to change. And I think we need to be honest, with ourselves at times, and that's where the problem lies, being honest. Because again, as I said, can you imagine West Indies bowing out and an ex-president having a field day because that has happened, because of this is so politicized? How can that be right?
I don't even like to talk about it.
And something, and I'll say it. Let's think about it. In the 80s, we talk about we dominated in the 80s, which was all well and good.
Yeah.
What did we do for the future? All right?
Yes.
We went downhill. In 2016, we won our last World Cup, 2012 and then 2016.
Yes.
The decline of our T20 team started in 2016. The then captain played his last game in 2016 with Darren Savo.
Yes.
All the guys who played and won that World Cup did not play cricket together for how many years after that? That is where the decline of our T20 cricket went. You think about it.
It's talking just like the 2006 World Cup football team of Toronto, who were blacklisted and fell apart. Same sort of problem.
From 2016 was the decline of our T20 team. 2012 we won. 2014 it had the big fiasco. 2016 the guys buckled up. They did well and they won the World Cup. What happened after that? Since then we moved from the number 1 team in the space of months to number 7. Why?
To the future, where do you see cricket in the Caribbean?
I think, Andrew, to be honest, we're struggling, and all stakeholders need to come together. And when I say all, I mean everybody, and sit down and decide where we want to take cricket in the Caribbean. As we continue to spin top in mud, and we're going to have 1 or 2 players making it out of the bunch, and a lot of cricketers are going to live by the wayside. We need to improve our facilities. We need to have academies. We need to put things in place for the younger ones, so they can be the ones to do West Indies proud. And if we don't do that, and we just continue to fight, politicize, be insular, then we are going nowhere fast.
Yeah, of course, I'm surprised. Definitely, I didn't expect something like that. But it's sad that we reach in that stage. I don't think we should have been in that stage. We shouldn't be, at one point in time, a team that won 2 World Cups, ranked number 1 in the world, have to play qualifiers to qualify for a format that we dominate the most, So it's sad to see the early exit, and I think it's a wake-up call for everyone involved in West Indies cricket and in the region, from players to administration to media to fans. We all have a part to play in order to get West Indies cricket close to where we want it to be.
What should be done, in your opinion? Now that has happened, what should we do? Because it's not a quick fix, we know that.
Yeah, definitely it's not a quick fix. I definitely don't have the answer to it. I suggest definitely we need a better program from grassroots programs. We need infrastructure. We can't turn up to a practice facility and we cannot practice because there was a hole in the cover, so and rainfall and it's wet. So players have to take pride in their own personal performance and respect the game and have that pride to do well, and compete. So again, it's all, everybody have to get involved. Everybody have to have one vision, one goal. There are too many people thinking about self and not thinking about the bigger picture, and that's from on top go filter all the way down to the bottom.
How you react to a former president celebrating the West Indies being knocked out?
A former president? Which one is that?
You only have one. I don't want to call the particular name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I didn't see the celebration, but I will safely say this, right? Since you said that former president celebrated. The last time we won the last World Cup in 2016, the captain of that team was Darren Sammy.
Yeah.
And he has never played a game for West Indies since then. So maybe people need to rewind the clock and see why it is in 2016 this team was the number one ranked team. The two-time World Cup winning captain Darren Sammy was sacked immediately after 2016. Straight after 2016, from being number one ranked team in the world to the beginning of 2017, become number ranked 8 in the world. So that was a turning point. That's why we have to play qualifiers. So if that last former president is celebrating the early exit of West Indies, is because of his shortcoming. That last administration, they are the ones have the T20 team in this way. And if you look at the stats is there, go back and check. Check and see when last Darren Sammy played for West Indies. How can someone win a World Cup, 2 World Cups, and never played for West Indies then? Then eventually they had one a year and a half with on different leadership.
Yes,
That was the decline. So that's why we are in this position today. So maybe the former president should come and celebrate.
From the perspective of West Indies cricket and West Indies fans, a lot of fans like the man next to you, Arthur Hutton, bitter, sour, upset. What do you tell them? What do you tell fans? Because a lot of people have said they're not watching any more cricket because West Indies not there. They've lost interest. Young, and maybe that could turn off some young players too as well who would want to play cricket. What do you tell them?
Well, fans have a right to be disappointed, and rightly so, because at the end of the day, you're a West Indian fan and your team not doing well, so you feel disappointed. But like I said before, there's signs, and you have to read those signs. Don't expect. Last season when we went to the World Cup and the squad was announced, a lot of people wasn't happy with the squad. I remember when I make my return and come back from water retirement, a lot of people wasn't happy with that also. And then prior to my retirement, I left being the leading wicket taker for West Indies out of retirement. And finally I retire, obviously. Then they started to have a go at Pollard. Pollard finally retired. Then now there's no one to cuss. There's no one to pick on. But we as players, sometimes we feel we get unnecessary target. We've been targeted unnecessary and rightfully, I think, people now seeing why it is the importance and the value that we have. You're calling for certain players to be in the team. This one should be in the team. This one shouldn't be playing, or whatever the case is. And now we all step away, give everyone the opportunity to go and do what they have to do, and then this is the result. So again, you have to mix youth with experience. You have to have patience. You have to give people the opportunity to fail and have players around them to guide them who've been there, done that. Don't forget, Pollard, myself, Chris Gale, all of us, we've been out of West Indies cricket up until the new administration come. It's only when the new administration come we come back into West Indies cricket. So having said that, we could have been in a worse place. Even when Pollard and Phil take over, check Pollard starts as a one-day captain and a T20 captain. It's not bad, But again, when you inherit something in a bad state, it's impossible you have to do wonders to really get them back up on the top. But when he took over his leadership, it was already in a bad state.
How do you overcome all of that? We have a young captain, Nicholas Puran. He's under a lot of pressure, as you said. Obviously, people are calling for his head for one reason or the other, and they'll be calling for the heads of Phil Simmons and everybody else. What do you tell them? You know all the parties here. And I'm not saying that because they're from Trinidad and Tobago, but you know them at the end of the day. What do you tell them? Phil Simmons, Roddy Estic, and all of the crew there involved, and of course Nicholas Puran, Ruffman Powell, I think they must all be depressed and sad, obviously, right? But what do you tell them?
Yeah, they will be depressed, they will be sad, disappointed. I don't know what to tell these guys. It's just sad to see what happened to a young leader like Puran. Puran is someone has a good cricketing brain. But like I said, there's more to it. There's a lot more behind the scenes that, people, we only looking at this moment right there. But it's go deeper than that. And, hopefully with this results, we can really get serious where our cricket is concerned and start to do the right things.
Captain in the West Indies, is captain in the West Indies too heavy a burden right now for anybody?
Of course, because captaincy, captaincy is not only on the field. Captaincy, once you're the captain of a team, a lot of the things that happen off the field, you have to try and iron out those things before it filters down to the dressing room. So if your players are uncomfortable, your responsibility and duty as a captain is you are that vessel between players, management, administration. So anything is going wrong with players or they're uncomfortable, they talk to the captain talk to the coach or the manager, and then up to the top. So Pollard was very good at that. Very few captains could manage on the field and off the field challenges, but it's hard because things you're not supposed to be focusing on, you have to focus on it. You have to focus on whether if you get a uniform on time, if you're staying in the right hotel, like these petty things, like contracts and all these things. Captains shouldn't have to worry about those things. These things should automatically be dealt with, but unfortunately it comes with the baggage as unless you're a captain where you're just happy to spin a coin and don't worry about like previous captains.
Former West Indies all-rounder and World Cup winner Dwayne Bravo ending that clip. Earlier you heard from Kieron Pollard, and they basically had similar sentiments, saying that the downfall of our T20 team started in 2016, ironically after we won that World Cup. So let's see if things will change anytime soon. We end the show with netball because the Sunshine Girls will be participating in the Fast 5 World Series in New Zealand next week. The usual names that you might hear about: Janelle Fowler, Shamira Sterling, Kadian Dehaney, all those players not a part of this squad, a fairly young squad going, but it will be led by one of our most experienced players, Romelda Aiken-George. Annette Daly is the coach of the team for the tournament, and I asked her about her feelings heading into the tournament.
It is a pleasure to be doing it, and I do consider it a privilege.
In regards to preparation, we know that it's not always ideal, but how has it been heading into the tournament, which starts next week?
Definitely not ideal for something like this. You would at least wanted, say, 11 months, to get the ladies prepared for it. But the good thing about it is that 8 of these ladies just completed the Caribbean Championship, and therefore, based on netball itself, they would have been playing some competitive netball. Based on Fast 5 and the requirements for Fast 5, we have a number of areas that we want to work at. We know we have limited time, but I know that the ladies are up to the task. These ladies are new at Fast 5. So on this team, we only have 2 members that have played Fast 5 prior. So to Fast 5, it is a new bunch, and therefore we have some work to do.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we don't play Fast 5 often here locally compared to the other countries. Between now and the next Saturday when the tournament starts, what would you say needs to be the biggest adjustment that needs to happen for the girls to ensure that they are competitive against the other countries?
Well, we know that the learning curve is really steep for this particular competition, and therefore we are pulling on specific areas, how strategic we can be, and how quickly we are going to be thinking and executing the plans. So that's the focus now. We have started some simulation activities, and we did one last night, and we're going to do another tonight. And it is about looking at particular scenarios, and then for the ladies to create their plans and to execute their plans within short time frame. So we'll be continuing this when we enter into New Zealand, and I know that the ladies are up to the task. They are young minds, and that's so good. These are young girls, and they're willing and ready to learn.
Yeah, you did mention them being a young team. Many of the usual stars that we see for the Sunshine Girls unavailable, but it does give some of these young players an opportunity to play. How important is it for the national program to give some of these girls exposure against the world's best?
It is so important because we want to ensure that when we select a 12 to represent the country in a world championship, that we are selecting from a group of talented ladies, and then persons really have to work hard for their positions. So giving these youngsters this type of exposure is really good, and then they can really understand now what high intensity netball is all about.
Yeah. You speak about high intensity. Pressure is normal in sports. What do you do or say as the coaching staff to ensure that these young women don't, I would say, crumble or feel that the pressure is too big for their shoulders?
One of the good things is that I have been with these ladies now for over a year, because most of these ladies were a part of the development squad, and therefore building relationships is one way of helping persons to manage a particular situation. So it is good that we have this relationship. It's good that when we're having the conversation, that these young ladies really accept how talented they are, because sometimes that is just the challenge. They really don't know how talented they are. So now that they're going to match up their skills against more experienced players, this will give them an idea, and they will do well. One thing, Jamaican tenacity tends to rise.
Yes.
In situations that sometimes others may fail. And I really have some fighters on board. They have the guts, and I am calling on that.
So you mentioned it's about being a young team. It will be led by Romelda Aiken George, one of our most experienced players. who also gave birth just a few months ago. How vital is her presence and experience for you and the team in the tournament?
Oh, definitely Romelda will bring that experience not only as a player on the court, but also off the court. And it is important because the ladies do look up to Romelda and the experience that she will bring to the table. The management staff and coaches also, look to that. So it's really important, and Romelda coming on board is just showing how strong women are, in coming back after giving birth so soon, but is willing and ready and able to perform at this level.
Yeah. Over the last few tournaments and series that the Sunshine Girls have played in there has been a particular energetic vibe, camaraderie that we saw, which even took social media by storm. How do you, as the coaching staff and as the team, try to keep that kind of energy up despite missing some of the usual stars, as we mentioned earlier?
Sometimes it's about listening to the players. It's really important for you to do that. And you find that they do have things to say. And when you work together with them, you will have that camaraderie that you require.
Yeah. At the Commonwealth Games and even in our most recent series against New Zealand, the crowd seemed to have such great support for the team. Are you sort of expecting the same, or even if that does not occur, how do you, ensure that the girls block out the possible noise or everything that other teams may be getting?
Well, I'll tell you this, that wherever we go, Jamaicans that is involved in sports and even outside of sports, we always have the crowd cheering for us. So we expect that when we're playing New Zealand, we're in New Zealand, we expect that the New Zealanders will be cheering for New Zealand. But you know that wherever we go, there's always a group of Jamaican in the crowd. And I know that you are aware that when Jamaicans are in a crowd,
yes,
it doesn't matter how small it is.
That is true.
We tend to be the loudest. So I know that the ladies will relish this, but it's also about taking on the energy of the crowd as well. So whether it's about you or not, how do you take that energy on and how do you feed on it and to use it to do well?
Coach of the Sunshine Girls Fast 5 team, Annette Daly. We'll see how the Sunshine Girls perform next week. That's it for the show. Thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciated your company from 1 to 2 p.m. Remember, Sports Talk happens every Saturday, 1 to 2 p.m. right here on Love 101. So until then, please enjoy your weekend. And as always, watch some sports.